Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited. The speaker is thebomb.com. He's from Detroit, Michigan, Motortown. Right? Y'all give it up for him. He gonna tear it up. He's gonna tear it up. So I'm so excited to hear him. And so, Kenny, where are you? He's going to introduce our speaker.
All right. Omari Barksdale, man of, I just met you just a little while ago, but I can tell already just what kind of man you are, man. He knows the power of positive words. You know, as an activist, Omari has been involved in a multitude of activities and programs. He talked to me about Sasha a little bit. That was for an important cause that he does in the Detroit area. You know, he's a poet, ally, giving assistance in hands. Since becoming an activist, he has worked in the capacity of the legislative assistant for Detroit City Council and waged strong campaigns for the state representative for the 4th District of the state of Michigan legislator. Omari also has extended his hand to work with many community organizations, governing bodies, both locally and state lines and all over the U.S. Says SASHA stands for Sexual Assault Services for Holistic Healing and Awareness. He's a facilitator for that program to educate young men in Detroit, high schools about various realities to gender-based violence, anti-women culture, and to provide bystander intervention training. You know, that's a program I'm involved in too here at TCC, the AVPO. You know, and Safe Haven is our local community place to go. If you need somewhere to go, if you see something, say something. You can be a hero. You know, oftentimes we just turn our eye to somebody who's hurting, or somebody's getting yelled at, or a kid is getting abused. You know, it's time to make a stand. And if you can do something, but let people know. If you see something, say something. Okay. Without further ado, I just want to introduce Omari King Wise Barksdale.
How's everybody doing today? Everybody get their fill of chicken and bacon glazed green beans? I said my grandmother would have a heart attack if she saw bacon sitting on top of the string beans. That's how we do it in Texas. I ain't mad at you. So, first off, Anthony and Jody. Where are Anthony and Jody? See, Anthony is. I want to give a huge thank you to Anthony and Jody for the diligence they put into getting me here today. Thank you, and show them a lot of love. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, Anthony. And to the group I met with earlier today, I want to thank you all, because every opportunity for me to talk to you is an opportunity for me to hear you. And if I'm not growing, then you're not growing, and vice versa. So we have to approach this growth thing as an individual thing and as a collective piece. Am I right? So how many times have you seen a tree growing in a forest and no trees around it? Wouldn't be a forest, would it? All right, so let's be a forest. Let's be trees. Let's be trees in the forest. Do all trees in the forest look just alike? Are they all the same species? Probably not, right? When's the last time you seen a tree discriminate against a tree? When is the last time you saw a tree marginalize a bush? When's the last time you saw a rabbit trying to keep a raccoon from going up a tree? You probably never saw it, right? I think humans, we have become so detached from our humanity that we have to relate back to nature to reattach ourselves to it. What I want to talk to you about today is a few different points that all link back to masculinity. So if we look at the board, we see that this isn't my favorite definition of masculinity, but this is the one that we tend to operate most off of. Masculinity, possession of the qualities traditionally associated with men. Now let's look down. Handsome, muscle, driven. Then we look down, manliness, machismo, vigor, strength, masculinity, ruggedness. So what we're saying is that this is the total definition of what masculinity is. So then I have to ask you, what era in time does this fit? Have these definitions, all of these words, always defined what masculinity is? Or has masculinity evolved? Has masculinity changed? Because I know there are some things about being a man that weren't necessarily manly 50 years ago. We hear a lot of people talk about hip hop artists, oh, they're wearing these tight pants. We didn't used to wear that in my era. And then you go back and pull up a video of Soul Sonic Force breakdancing, and you see a guy in cheetah fur leather with tight pants on, right? So what we know is that masculinity is more fluid than we like to give it credit for. So why do we continue to try to define masculinity for other people? It's because we want everything to fit inside of our comfort zone. And the comfort zone is a very dangerous space. So let me go to the next slide. What we want to realize is that toxic masculinity training, this is a social training, where we learn the negative aspects of masculinity, is a trained thing. So toxic masculinity training does not work where ego is not the fuel source. So in other words, our ego has to be the source of the failure, the toxic nature of an ego. There are some good aspects to ego. Ego can be healthy in some ways, but most often the way we express it as men is a very unhealthy way. What does it say? Can somebody read this out to me? Are you afraid or scared to be identified as weak or soft? How many men in here are afraid to be or scared to be identified as soft? Let's keep it real. We can't do anything today if we don't keep it real. Okay. Let's see. Ernest, why are you afraid to be considered weak or soft? Can I get a mic out on the floor? Sorry, I did go to the person that was eating. I apologize for that.
I guess if people feel that you're weak or soft, I think they'll try to take advantage of you. And to me, that'll put me on another level where I don't want to go.
Okay. And I did come to you because you were eating, because people with a full belly and a full mouth tend to be more honest. Okay, anybody else? Anybody else want to say why you're scared to be identified as weak or soft? Let's go here and then go here, and then we'll move to the next point.
I'm from South Side Chicago. When you weak or soft.
Ooh, South Side of Chicago.
Yeah, they take advantage of, or try to take advantage of you. So then you gotta, put them hands on them. I'm 0-7 in the streets, but I'm good.
You're 0-7 in the street. Never won a fight, but willing to fight. You heard of golden gloves. Those are the wooden gloves.
being born and raised in the city of Detroit, East Side, I went to Frederick Douglass, the all-boys school there.
Okay.
And being raised by my grandfather, I was told that a man should be a symbol of strength.
Should be a symbol of strength. I'm glad you say that, because what is strength? You know, a lot of times men will say stuff like, women are emotional creatures. She's always crying. You know, things like this, right? What's more emotional than a physical response to fight? There's nothing more emotional than that. The first thing you want to do when you get upset is fight. I call that crying with your hands. You are actually crying. You're just crying in a way that society prescribes to you. So society is telling you what to do. So how cool is it to be a clone that exhibits unhealthy traits? Because what we're doing is we're becoming clones. We do exactly what every other man does because we want to fit into the man box. We want to fit into what society says we are, who society says we should be, who society says we need to be. So we become clones. We tend to dress alike, except Freddie, who tried to dress better than me today with the Gucci bow tie. we tend to dress alike. All of our sons have to play football. We always have to fight if someone says something wrong to us or to the woman that's next to us. It has to be a fight. We do the same things over and over and over and over, and then we want to talk about our uniqueness. So I want you today, and today isn't a day of me speaking at you. I want to talk with you because I have some challenges for you. So first challenge I have for you today, especially the men in the room, is examine this. Is this you? Is any part of this you? Can you let this go? Can you redefine who you are? Because if you can't redefine who you are, how can you ever find your own evolution? If you are exactly today what you were yesterday, and if you are exactly tomorrow what you are today, what will you ever be? You can predict what you'll be. You'll be what you are today. An unhealthy man that has a problem with relationships, that can't resolve his own issues, and can't express himself emotionally. Let's talk about the ego effect. All of these women issues out here, domestic violence, sexual assault. Let's redefine that. These aren't women's issues. These are men's issues that mostly impact women. A woman does not rape herself. A woman does not beat herself. A woman's clothing does not make your decisions for you. As we victim blame her clothing. If she wasn't wearing that tight skirt, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But what about the woman wearing a full Muslim garb, hijab from head and everything from head to toe? What about the woman wearing a business suit on the way to work? Did her clothing draw that? So what we need to start saying is, if he wouldn't have wanted to rape her, she wouldn't have been raped. If he didn't want to beat her, she wouldn't have been beaten. Let's redefine this. Let's call it what it is. If we want to talk about a woman's issue, maybe there's a specific disease that is unique to women, and that's a woman's issue, right? But a woman's issue is not what a man does to her. We live in a patriarchal society. We all know that. I blocked out part of the definition of patriarchy. It says a system of society or government in which men hold the power and women are largely excluded from it. How many women CEOs can you name? Can anybody name a woman CEO? Oprah? Oprah Winfrey? Can anybody name a male CEO? Anybody? Okay. Who was that? Okay, anybody else? Okay, so we have the names coming out readily now, right? Okay, this is because we live in a society that is male dominated. And that's not to say there are more males than there are women. That's to say that it's male dominated, meaning men control the media, men control the corporations, men tend to control the educational systems, men tend to control the economics, men tend to control politics. Does anybody see this? So I'm gonna do something I saw someone say before, and it was on a black or white issue. But I'm gonna say this, and I need you all to be perfectly honest as we do this today. Because if you're not honest, we cannot move. If we're not honest, we can't examine. We can't be introspective. How many men in here believe that men don't necessarily have privilege over women in this society? Okay. One. That don't believe that men have more privilege in society than women. Okay. You reverse that? Okay. Okay. So then I don't have to do the next exercise, because what I was going to do is ask everybody who wouldn't mind being treated as women are treated in this society every day to stand up. So if I did that, nobody would be standing, right? Okay. We've been socialized as men to only know how to express ourselves in sexist, misogynistic, and homophobic ways when solely in the company of men. Right? We're playing cards. How many people here play Texas Hold'em? Oh, somebody's lying. Texas Hold'em is like the biggest sport in the country right now. Like, only one person in here in Texas plays Texas Hold'em. Okay, what about dominoes? How many of you can't count real fast? Add like me, you got to secretly count on your fingers how many points you have under the table. I'm horrible with math. Okay, so what about basketball? How many men were in the locker room, football? How many men have had locker room experiences because you play sports, right? Think about the conversations. What were the jokes? How did we tease each other? How did we laugh? What was the humor based on? Our jokes become all about diminishing other men by implying that they are gay or women-like, which is meant to serve as an insult, because anything woman-like is deemed as what? Soft? Weak? Inferior? So if our commentary, our jokes, especially when women aren't around, are diminishing the feminine attributes and the women's attributes, then what are we really thinking when the women are present, even though we're not saying it out loud? The same types of things, right? You ever walked in on a joke about black folks, and you're black and you just happen to catch the joke? Just catch the end of it? Latino, you ever walked in and you heard the end of a joke about Latinos? All of us have had that experience. Except women kind of get to experience this every day. Women are always walking, it doesn't even have to be a joke. We're just saying stuff outright that's just misogynistic and sexist. It doesn't have to be a joke. They just get to experience this commentary all the time. A woman shouldn't be running for president. A woman shouldn't be in charge of a corporation. A woman shouldn't lead a country because she's too emotional. Well, sometimes I want a little emotion in my leadership. Show me some passion. Show me that you love the people. But that's not necessarily an indictment against women. The fact that women can be more in touch with their emotion, that makes us as men look like the unevolved portion of society. We have to be emotionally constipated all the time. Tell your 5-year-old son, stop crying. Be a man. In a minute he tell you he gonna do what he wanna do, you a boy, you my son, you in my household. Send the mixed messages. Boy didn't cut his arm off, you talking about be a man. Boy just fell head first out of tree. You talking about stop crying. I'ma cry. I'm 42. If I fall right now on my knee, which I have no cartilage left in, if I fall on my knee right now, you all are gonna have some tears in front of you. Offering me napkins and stuff. So since our emotion is, let's not cry, let's not show emotion. As I said earlier, we redirected the violence. Anybody know what this game is called? Say it louder. King of the Mountain. Anybody ever played King of the Mountain? King of the Hill? So in Michigan, we would get snow and it would look like this mound, that's how the snow would look. And we would have battles to see who was king of the mountain. Whoever was king of the mountain on my street got to get the first pick on all the basketball games and football games for like the next month. So we would fight to see who's king of the mountain. We are prone to violence. It doesn't matter where we are on the earth. We are prone to violence, men. But we think men should be the ones leading countries. We are fighting wars that make no sense all the time. All of this comes from the ego. Who has to be the strongest? That's not just personal. That's not personal. We do that on a global platform. We are scared to be seen as weak. We don't want another country to come in and invade us. But we also can't be strong in negotiation rooms. So we have to be overly aggressive in negotiation. So let's do the math. We're overly aggressive in our communication, and then we don't want to be seen as weak. So every man at the table is being overly aggressive and not wanting to be seen as weak. What kind of movement can happen at that table? Absolutely zero. But these are the ways we negotiate life, these same ways. We negotiate our everyday the same way. If a guy walks by you, he's walking too close, you want to stand strong, make him bump into you or make him say, excuse me. Am I right? So when men do talk, we usually talk to our friends. It's hard for us to communicate outside of our friend circle. So when men do talk, what do we talk about? Anybody? Sports. Before we get any further with sports, when we talk about sports, we're talking about domination. Who dominated who? Who dunked on who and made them look bad? Who hit somebody so hard they couldn't get up? Like we talk about all the things that are supposed to be dominating in these sports. Am I right? So it still comes back to ego. We're just projecting our ego on somebody that gets paid higher money to do what we weren't able to succeed in ourselves. Now, I'm not saying that's always a bad thing. Sometimes it's just fun to watch sports. But what I am saying is, let's start to look at things for what they are. Let's start to examine them and pick them apart. Because you have to develop a filter. Until you develop a filter, you won't be able to navigate things like this. So what else do men talk about? Somebody said sex and women. What else? What do we talk about sex and women? How many? Woo! I heard dudes in the locker room that told me they went through a whole crew of friends. Oh, all 6 of them, they best friends, but I had all of them. You never even had a conversation with them. You catch me in lying all the time on their lower section. I did this with this. No, you didn't. What's scary is, even if you did, why is it important to me? So, what else do we talk about? Sex, sports, politics. So when men talk about politics, what are we talking about? Not getting treated right? Who's making the calls? Right? But how often do we talk about how women are often excluded from the political landscape? Almost never. You said men talk about money. Why is money so important to men? Power. What else? Resources, which leads to power. This go back to ego? When I was growing up in the late 80s, in the late 90s, we knew one thing about the dope boys in our neighborhood. Dope boys sold dope to get women. So they could throw money around, so they could buy nice cars, do all the things that attract women. Right? Does that go back to ego? What do men say to their sons? What do we talk about with our sons? Anybody have a son? Getting a job? Yeah, what are some of the other things we say? Did you win? What do we say to our sons about women? Respect them like you respect your mama. Make sure they look good. Make sure they can cook. Treat them right. What about the derogatory things? Cheaper to keep her? All right, what else? So listen, one day I was riding in the car with my father and my older brother, who's like a year and a half older than me. Obviously, my father didn't like to wait. So we're riding down the street. I'm 11 years old. My father says to me and my brother, "You got any trim yet?" And I'm thinking, is he talking about the outside of the bread that your mother cuts off for you? Trim? And I wasn't a street kid at that point, so I had to get clarity. I said, well, what do you mean, Dad? And because my dad wasn't around a lot, I didn't know this terminology from him. So he said, "Did you get some trim?" And my brother said, "Omari, he's saying, have you had sex yet?" And then my brother laid out to my father the many young girls that he claimed to have had sex with. And I'm sitting in the back seat, still mind-boggled about this new terminology. Because I thought I was cool. I thought I knew all the words. So at that moment, I became the most mature person in the car. Because I thought it was idiotic for my father to have asked me that. And I thought that it was sad that my brother knew what it was. So when we look at the dynamics between parents and children, male parents and male children, the dynamics tend to shift as the maturity levels shift. The dynamics tend to shift as the values tend to shift. See, I grew up with my mother in a house with 6 women, and my uncle was my father because he was always coming down from Flint every weekend to take care of me and teach me. So when I got to my father, my uncle had already dispelled a lot of the ignorance that he knew I would receive from my father. How many people had that person in their life that dispelled that in advance? How many of you? How many men in here have had a man like that in their life? Not a whole lot of us. That's why it's important for you in this room to become that man, to become that person. And there are women in this room that have children maybe who don't have that man in their life, and you have to take the same information back to your child. It's important. It's more important at this point in order for humanity to start evolving again and start to do better again and start to be human again. We have to have these experiences and this social training. What do men say to their daughters? Stay away from boys. Boys are stupid. Don't men kind of say the opposite to their daughters that they told their sons about women? Go get a bunch of women, go have a bunch of sex, make sure she looks good, make sure her body is nice, make sure she can cook. But then they tell the daughter, make sure you stay away from that same guy I just described to your brother. That's how we know we're wrong. That's how we know we are teaching the wrong things. Anytime we contradict ourselves from our daughter to our sons, when the message is not consistent, we are not teaching them to be in the same society. We're teaching them to live in segregated realities. What can we hope to receive from our children and see in our children at that point? All we can see is a reflection of our inconsistencies. So if you want your children to be a reflection of your inconsistencies, continue to do that. But if you want your next generation to be better than your generation, let's start doing some training. Men and women in friendships. This is not the same as a romantic relationship. Men and women in friendships. How many people in here have a very close friend that is of the opposite sex that you have not slept with? That you do not want to sleep with? Some of the hands dropped. Some of the hands actually dropped. Thank you for being real. Thank you for keeping it real. If you can't find a man who can have a healthy relationship with the opposite sex, you're probably finding a man that is very flawed and has no counseling in his life. Had a guy tell me the other day, man, you know, if you're with a woman and she got a male friend that's real close, how can you deal with that? I couldn't handle it. I couldn't have that. I said, I need her to be able to talk to him about what's going on with us because I need him to be able to tell her something that's balanced. I may have been wrong, and he might say, yeah, that was wrong. But she may have taken it wrong, and he might be able to say, well, look, from a man's perspective, X, Y, and Z. So we need the counseling of one another. We live on the same damn planet. And we keep acting like we live in separate universes. I want you to understand that we share the same space and we need to start acting like it. If you're a man, let's skip over that one. I want to talk a little bit about privilege and understand that we have so much to talk about. I'm just giving you all some filler points to go and research, to go in and expand your thoughts and expand your understanding of. I can't give you everything today. But what I want to give you is a foundation, or at least help fill in some cracks in the foundation you already have. So we talk about male privilege. It seems like you all understand male privilege, so I won't go into great detail about it. We know that we're privileged. We know that we're privileged over over women. We know that white men are more privileged than black men, but black men are still privileged over women. In a lot of instances, in most instances. So, in my fraternity, we say, for every credit, there must be a debit. This is a financial terminology, but it comes from society. It comes from everyday life. This is about balance. If you don't have this in your checkbook is what? It's out of balance. So, what do I mean by this? For every privilege, there must be an injustice. This is not the type of balance we want. See, there can be two different types of balances. There could be a healthy one and an unhealthy one. We want to stay away from the unhealthy balances because it's only balanced in the mind of the unhealthy. So we want to move to a situation where every privilege is no longer subsidized by an instance of marginalism. So let's take this to racism, because this is where people tend to understand a little bit more. For every privilege, especially if we look at it from an economic standpoint, for every privilege a white person receives, they received it on the back of a minority. Give you an example. You're at a restaurant. This happened to me in Portland a couple weeks ago. You're in a restaurant. They seat you. In some cases, you're lucky you got seated, right? They seat you. You're a black person. And you watch as your table, you're thirsty as hell because you've been working and you're on the move. So at your table, you have nothing, no water, no setup, no menu. And you watch as white person after white person comes into that establishment and is immediately given water as they're being seated and immediately given a menu. And a lot of times they have been able to give their order before you even receive your drink of water. That ever happened to anybody in here? So that privilege is subsidized by an instance of marginalism. Now, how many instances of privilege are subsidized on the back of women? On the back of women. Can we think of any? What about when a man, and we discussed this earlier, what about when a man and a woman are out at dinner? Who does the waitress bring the bill to? The man? And as we mentioned earlier, to a man, that's not necessarily a privilege in his mind, right? He's like, I don't want the bill. Give her the bill. But one of the most utilized forms of control under gender-based violence is economic power. Right? So you have a woman that's being abused and she doesn't feel like she can leave because the man controls the pocketbooks she has no money to leave with. Well, let's take it to that dinner. The man, as men often think in society, if I buy dinner, she got to sleep with me. I'm going to get something out of this. Anybody ever heard that? So then the question is, if she pays, is she buying her way out of sex with you? I mean, let's think about that seriously. Is she purchasing her way out of your slavery? Is she purchasing her way out of you controlling her? Is she purchasing her way out of you demeaning her? Because the last time I checked, you can't compare a meal with the value of a woman's body and the value of a woman's choice. I pulled this off of Facebook the other day. We look at equality versus equity. Everybody wants to see the game, but everybody doesn't want to help each other see the game. Even if it means we have crates, we have to give a little bit of our resources over to somebody else. Why can't we live like this? The equity. Because equality isn't always equal. I want you to etch this picture into your head. And I want you to start living your life by this. Because if you aren't part of the solution, you're part of the problem. As the old saying goes. So I want to talk about now, how much time do we have? Half hour? Okay. 20 minutes till the Q&A? Okay. So this is what I call the 7 toxic masculinity addictions. We think about gambling. Gambling's an addiction, right? So when we talk about the masculinity addictions, these are the things that men love to do and don't typically want to let go of. So number 1, the word bitch. Have you ever heard a man say that word? Anybody? About a woman? You ever notice how much more emphasis he puts in that particular word than the rest of the words in that same sentence? There's a whole lot of meaning, and there's often a lot of pain. And I'm gonna tell you, if you're a man that uses this word in relation to women, I know something about you. I know that you have been hurt by a woman and have never resolved the issue. I know that you refuse to let it go and may not ever address it because you're comfortable with this word. To you, this is your therapy. Validation of sexual prowess. We talked about that a little bit earlier. King of the mountain. We talked about that, the alpha male complex. Emotional invulnerability, the superhero complex. This is the man that thinks he always has to go and resolve an issue that a woman had with a man by using his hands. Not realizing that he may have just created a worse situation for that woman. One of the things that we do know is that most men on this earth, most men in this society, will not rape women and will not assault a woman. But we do know that most assaults on women are at the hands of a man. So this means that a whole lot of family members and friends swooping in to go and beat somebody down or take somebody out because of what they did to the woman. This creates a retaliation from the person who was the aggressor or offender. So we need to find healthier ways to address. We can't address everything with our hands. And oftentimes when we do address it with our hands, it's so that we can get credit for being the person that swooped in to handle the situation. So we have to be very careful. The cool. This is the guy that always has to appear to be cool, no matter what the situation. He has to be cool because he's looking for social credit. The problem with the cool is it leads to so many of these other ones. The superhero complex. He can't be emotionally vulnerable. He has to have prowess. Even if it's not sexual, he has to have prowess. And the last is the man code century. So this is the person that stands guard over the man code. Anybody ever heard of the man code? Who wrote it? Who's ever read the book? You know what year it was published? You know what Publishing House put it out? Has anybody ever seen the Man Code book? Why? There isn't one. But we act like it is. We walk around protecting this invisible man code. I even had people quote man code with a section attached to it. Man Code, Article 7, entry number 234. Where the hell did you find this book? Because I want to reference it. But they talk about it like the Man Code is as available to read as the Bible or as USA Today. So why are we standing guard over these false sets of ideology? Because we live in a patriarchal system that says that this is what a man has to be. And you should all of you men should be offended. Because we thought for so long, and maybe even till today for some of us, we thought for so long that this was real. We thought for so long that the Articles of Man Code Federation actually governed and prescribed exactly what we should be. You should be offended. You should be offended that you have been born and told that you have to be a clone. So, as we look at these numbers, which was the most recent number you committed? I want to ask the men that. Which was the most recent number you committed? Somebody raise your hand. Number 3, King of the Mountain, alpha male. Anybody else? Number 4, what was it? You didn't want to cry in front of somebody? I'm a man, I'm gonna be all right. Somebody over here had their hand up. Yeah. Okay. But you're having an epiphany right now. Is that what I'm witnessing? Where's the pastor? Pastor? How many numbers in the last 24 hours have you used? Give me a number. Somebody raise your hand. You don't have to say specifically what they are. Probably 1. Anybody use 2? 1, 2. Anybody? Can we get a 3? Okay. How many? Let's say there was a governing body that said, you have to keep one of these and have to throw away the rest. Jabari, which one would you keep? Which one would you have to keep? Because you got to throw away the rest. Somebody says 6. Okay. You keep 7? Okay. You will redefine the code. Maybe 3? How many for 3? How many for 4? For 5? Superhero. How many for number 1? All right, so this means that everybody in this room can give up number 1. So we go through steps, and number 1 is the first step. So all of those who are willing to give up number 1 and pledge right now to not refer to women as bitches, consider women that, and so on and so forth, anything with this word relating to women, if you pledge to throw that word away, raise your hand. You don't have to. But right now, raise your hand. This is you to yourself. This is not you to me. Because only you know if you're lying. Only you know if today it feels good and tomorrow you're going to wake up when the honeymoon is over from this and whatever.